that every time we put on the schedule, white folks shut down the slave theater. Every time she's on the schedule, they shut down the slave theater. All the way from Baltimore, Maryland, who really understand the power of black people and is ready to share that knowledge with you. Let us all stand and put our hands together for our keynote speaker for tonight, Dr. Patricia Newton. Let's give Dr. Patricia Newton a warm round of applause. All the way from Baltimore, Maryland, Dr. Patricia Newton. Let's give it up. The next voice that you will hear from this microphone, she needs no introduction by no one. Everyone in the sound of my voice know her. I present to you now, one more time, Dr. Patricia Newton.
Hotep, Abanagari, Nengadef. Word up, y'all. It's always great to be in New York with the United African Movement, no matter whether they be in the slave or in the street. I think that it's about to become a tradition. Every time now that I come to New York to talk to the UAM, we get kicked out. I don't know, it sounds like a personal problem I got. Me and the judge, huh? I don't know, perhaps maybe that discussion today with Imhotep, Gary Bird, Nana, about melanin was just too black for him. Richard King makes a statement that the problem now is how we're going to learn to deal with our black selves. And I guess you have been delivered a message that UAM does not stand for Oreo cookie. And so I think the message is very clear that it's going to be imperative that by this time next year, you have your own facility. You just can't keep doing it this way. New York City has a number of abandoned and vacant buildings and warehouses. Buy one of those old warehouses that no one wants and put your backs and your arms and your legs together and let's build an African center. Let's do that. And I'm going to publicly state that effective immediately, I'm going to be one of the first people to make a contribution to you doing that. Because I come from the South, and I came from Arkansas, and my grandparents were landowners. In the town and the county where my people came from, my family owned a third of the county. They never lost it in slavery. They always could read and write, and it came directly through the African Native American line, which meant it was ours from jump. When I was a child, speaking about melanin, when I was a child, I remember that they wanted to put a road, pave a road that is now United States Highway 37 in Arkansas, 34, I can't remember exactly. And the property that they wanted to put the road on belonged to my grandmother's family. So the white man came around and offered, some money if she would give up the land. And she said, oh no, you boys, y'all just go on build your road. It's all right. You don't have to give me nothing. They thought she was stupid. She then began to partition the city and the county that all the people living on the street or the roadway could have the water system and sewage system of the town extended out to their houses so that the black folk could now have indoor toilets. At that time, we were the only family on the road with indoor toilets. They said no. She barbed wire fenced the road, the United States highway. And as children, we had to sit out there with double-barrel shotguns for 2-hour watches. And you got your, you know what, kicked if you didn't issue your 2-hour watch. The first time that I was ever knocked out is a white man tried to cross during one of my watches, and I was about 9.5, and I shot a pump gun at him, and it kicked back and knocked me out. Now, it wasn't considered in bad taste or violent for me to do that. It was considered protecting that which God had given us. And that is a critical lesson to learn, that with the power of not only the might, but the power of a family lineage that understands who they are and where they come from is very critical. Part of what you are doing here at UAM is creating a family lineage. This is a wonderful extended family, and you ought to give yourselves a hand for the love that you bring to it. When the white people heard about the fence being barbed wired, they petitioned the court to have her removed and to have us removed. They forgot one snafu. They didn't own the land. They never paid Clara for the property. And that old woman that said, you boys can just go on and build your road, owned everything. The road was a major roadway for farmers, for ginners, bringing their cotton in to be ginned and soybean crops in to be milled and harvested, so they couldn't do any business in the county. So what am I saying? I am saying that we have power that we don't even understand. Most of us don't even understand the nature of the dynamics. I'll bet you the city of New York hasn't bought up every building that hasn't had its taxes paid. And I bet you still can get some quick claim deeds and get yourself a building. Because that same grandmother at the age of 8 gave me my first 40 acres as a birthday present of land. Now I'm saying all that because I think it's important to understand where people come from and how long they've been fighting. And some of us been fighting, we popped out of the womb kicking you know what. And so what has happened is that people who didn't pay their taxes, and her target people were white people who couldn't read and write, whose property would get published in the county paper once a month or once every 3 months. We could read. She would take us through the paper. Our assignment was to read whose taxes were delinquent, and then to go with her to the county courthouse to see how much taxes were owed. My uncle gave me $100 for my 8th birthday, and my grandmother took it from me to buy my 20 acres of land. At the age of 16, by that time I had finished high school and was in college. My first summer job was not a job that I wanted, but a job that I was told to get by my family because my uncle was then sitting on the county agricultural board. My job was as a perimeter operator to measure aerial views of land for the county. So at the age of 16, we knew every plot of land in that county, what its assets were, what its natural resources were, and what its potential was, and we bought up almost all of it. So at the age of 18, my family, through their ingenuity, gave me for my birthday my first 300 acres of land. Now, what am I saying? We're talking about applied melanin right now. And we're talking about children being raised in a tradition that is the extension of what we do now. Because I'm lecturing and I've gone to medical school and all this other good stuff, that's not anything compared to where I came from. Why is this important? By the time I was finishing college, my cousin, who was one of the outside children from my daddy's baby brother, everybody in our family, if you had an outside child, my grandmother went and found the child because it had our blood in it. And that child had to become somebody. Out of 60 of those grandchildren and outside grandchildren, only one went to jail. And he only went to jail for a short period of time. But one of the cousins, when the schools integrated, got raped walking home from school by 2 white boys in her class that she knew. She was able to identify them to our family. Our family members, the oldest of each family unit, and in this instance, I was the oldest child. My father was the oldest child in his generation. All of these oldest children, cousins, nephews, grandchildren, and outside children were summoned to a little place called Tuckerman, Arkansas, for the express purpose of handling justice. After the meeting and the dispensation had been decided, we all went our merry ways. Lo and behold, no one knows how, those 2 young white men ended up dead at the bite of water moccasins. There is no love for the other side here. And we're very clear about what justice means. And in a melanated society, and in the next 21st century, there will be a melanated philosophy. There already is. Justice, in that instance, was in the spirit of Mott. The young lady was able to proceed on and do what she had to do without the scars and bearing the pain of having to know that some court system would free her perpetrators. That is African justice. That is melanin wisdom. And that is what we have to keep teaching our people. So it's only by the grace of my ancestors, the spirit of those warrior kings and queens and women who were very strong, who married men that were stronger, who weren't intimidated by those strong, righteous African women, that I am able to stand before you. So that when I give a lecture talking about what we need to do to help ourselves, I'm giving a lecture that comes from the heart and from my own personal history, in addition to what I may have learned and experienced in life. We all have stories of this type in our families, but we never share them with each other so that we can bring our system of pride up. Now, melanin and the geopolitics of healthcare. Professor James Smalls is in the audience. I'm glad to see you, Professor. You all please give him a hand. Professor Smalls is on the board, now quasi-defunct, of the Chemware Science Consortium, the people that bring you or have brought you the melanin conferences. I am the immediate past chairperson of that board, and Dr. Richard King, as you know, is serving both as president and chairperson. Dr. Rosalind Jeffries sits on that board Hunter Adams sits on that board, and the late Malachi Andrews sit on that board. The board and the melanin conferences you don't hear very much about. The logical and rational question would be, why? The honest and appropriate response is, we are under siege. And anybody who thinks that we aren't is a fool. As you well know, in 1994, Time magazine, April 4th, the one that has Bill Clinton and Stephanopoulos on the front, said that Hunter Adams, myself, and a few other scholars were racist. That we dared to talk openly and publicly and prolifically about melanin. Prior to that, the National Academy of Sciences, 2 years before that in 1992, called us pseudoscientists, preaching some mysticism, mumbo-jumbo, voodoo psychology, chemistry that came from someplace else and had no validity whatsoever. I had not seen the article when Hunter Adams called me and said, Pat, go to the newsstand and buy Time. I was on my way to England at that time to give a lecture. He said, they castigated me and they did their best to castigate you. I read the article. They had some people, black people making comment about melanin who don't even know anything about melanin. Some political scientists who aren't even historians, or least of all chemists, biochemists, and scientists. I don't think that one is qualified to speak about something that prolific that we were talking about hard science if they were simply somebody's political science instructor, perhaps at Harvard or someplace of that nature. No names will be called. The guilty might have to testify. And what they said about me, I found most intriguing. I had delivered with Charles Finch and Dr. Anthony Ando a presentation on African traditional healing at the National Medical Association conference in San Antonio, Texas. In the audience was an editor of the AMA, that's a white folks medical association, journal. And at the end of my presentation, he came up to me and said, your data is very striking. It was the data that I presented sometime here about our drug rehabilitation program and the great success we were having utilizing ancient concepts, melanin precursor, nutritional things, etc. He said, but I don't believe the data. And I said, I don't care. You don't have to believe it. It speaks for itself. Well, I'd like to have your data. I said, no, you wait for the book. And when the book comes out, you can buy it. And I'll be happy to autograph it for you if you like. And so, short of that, he went on his merry way, but turned my lecture tape over to a science editor of Time magazine. And then Time magazine proceeded to say, and I love this, even the well-educated, like Dr. Patricia Newton of Johns Hopkins University, is not immune to the rantings of the melanist. I never knew there was such a thing as melanist. She eloquently, you gotta love it. I mean, come on, they're giving you good stuff here. She eloquently waxed and waned about the virtues of melanin, even to say it had the properties of being a superconductor of electricity. And to my surprise, to his surprise, no one in the room offered a single objection. Now, I thought that was pretty good coming from Time magazine. They said I was eloquent. They said I was well educated. They said I could wax and wane, and no one objected. That's good. That's real good. I called up the editor and said, the gentleman that gave you that information, he was in the room. Why didn't he object? Well, will you be writing a response? I said, for what? You gave me all the publicity that I will ever need. And I love you and I thank you for it. Because the people who really want to know now will call me. And the rest of y'all you know what you can do. So I never made a response. Hunter was very disturbed. He said, Pat, what will we do? I said, Hunter, as a behaviorist, psychiatrist, let me tell you about progress. 5 years ago, they said we were pseudoscientists and that we had a theory. Now they're saying we're scientists with a doctrine. Don't you know progress when you hear it? What am I making this preclusive statement for? I'm saying this to say that what happened is a group of African scholars who were holding the data had let the cat out of the bag prematurely than when the white folks were ready for it to come out of the bag. Because make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, and others in this room who are here as spies, I'm going to give you something to go back and tell. Make no mistake about it. We were not supposed to have that information. We were not supposed to be eloquent enough to dissect that information, and certainly not supposed to be able to disseminate it to the masses of African people who live in these United States, the belly of the beast. So this was a fluke, and it should not have occurred except for in divine order. And in the concept of ma'at, it was, calling it up time. And so what happened is that here we were, each of us in our own independent ways had been doing research in melanin on our own. Carol Barnes, Richard King, Hunter Adams, myself. We had been doing this research independently of even knowing each other. Now, for something like that to occur, for African people to be doing this stuff independently, and then something happens in history, that you come together, that you marry, that you make a place, and from that place you nurture a child, and that child gives birth. That is a blessing from the ancestors. Because the ancestors had put that knowledge there years and centuries ago in the Kemetic philosophy of the black dot. With the snake, the ureus coming out of the crown of the king's head at the same cross section where the pineal gland sits in the head. That snake is not there just because it looks good. It is there for a reason. And as a result of that, that has spit forward in the genetic memory of our people. And there we were in our own little individual private worlds, doing our own little individual research. Me looking at it in chemical dependency, Hunter looking at it in physics, Richard looking at it in ancient Kemetic wisdom, Carol looking at it in biochemistry and organic chemistry, Francis Welsing putting out the philosophical construct that was the synthesis to bring us together. This is higher power working through time with people who had no relationship with each other whatsoever, but who came together, who were literally thrown together by happenstance, or should I say blackenstance. And we were thrown together at a moment in history. We had no idea that we were unleashing the major philosophical debate of the end of the 20th century. We had no idea that this would throw us into the pivotal place of being considered radical. All of us with our 100 degrees as Leonard Jeffries said, getting our white man's $1 million education. And I got more degrees behind my name than anybody I know. And so I know that by the order in which I was placed, you weren't supposed to have that information for yourself. I should be working for some European, working and doing his bidding and making sure he gets the credit. That's what I should be doing according to the design. But the ancestors and the Creator had another plan. And you know, that plan always supersedes man-made laws. And so as a result of that, we began to start holding conferences and exchanging information. We even at the last conference in DC, and by the way, there will be another melanin conference, just hold on. But we even developed now a section for new research to bring up the new graduate students and the new college students who want to pursue this. We're training a new generation. And as such, the cat being out of the bag like it is. Then we had Emerge on the scene, Emerge magazine, that said melanin madness. Well, I tell you what, that's the kind of madness you better have, because this other kind of madness is dangerous. The only madness to have is to be crazy about your melanin, and to be crazy enough to stand and live for it. We're not talking about dying, because that's the plan. We're talking about living for it. And so part of the issue now is that we came out, so there was this need to quiet us. And in so doing, after that still didn't work, here comes the criminal investigations. Here comes the tax investigations. Here comes the disruptions of family units. And here comes the elimination of people's jobs. Hunter Adams was working then at Argonne Laboratories and was called in and said, you either cease and desist this melanin or you get out. He called me. I said, get out. That's the first blessing you've received. You've been liberated and you don't even know it. He left and went to England and began to pursue a graduate degree, and now is back going to medical school after having done all of that other stuff. Because one of the key issues here is that you have to become economically independent. Because there is, in this melanin scheme of things, a plan to keep our people organizationally and institutionally disenfranchised economically. Now, understand this. While we're fighting these battles and paying enormous legal fees and all other kind of fees just to survive, we had put out, anybody here remember Pro-Melanin 2000 vitamins and nutritionals? Maybe not many. But these were the vitamins that we, through the research, had put out and done field testing on with the Cal State Haywood track team and the weightlifting team. These vitamins were then tested in doctors' offices. I became the East Coast distributor. We used to give them to patients. Dr. Barbara Justice was using them here in New York. We put these vitamins on the market made out of natural products with melanin precursors to substantiate and sustain our already God-given melanin, to stabilize it. Because as you're going to see when I get into my discussion, and I'm going to have to go down there, we are things in our environment that are destroying our melanin. We put these products out on the market. They did very, very well. Wasser sold the company to a sister that was a chemist in Indianapolis, and she mysteriously, 2 months after buying the company, had an accident, was unable to function for 1 year. In the process, they foreclosed on her melanin research building, okay? And the sister called trying to raise $20-some thousand in taxes so she could get operational when she could walk again. Someone came from nowhere in a car and struck this sister down in front of her building. 2 months after she purchased the company and went to get a formula that had been given to a person of other ethnicity in the packaging, which we did not know about. It turns out, ladies and gentlemen, that the melatonin products that you see now on the health food stores, one company I will not name carries the formula that was ours. We're talking about melanin and the geopolitics of health. Right. And so that while we're fighting and trying to survive, people are stealing your wisdom as they have always done. I remember Khalid Muhammad saying, you cannot steal the biggest thief. He stole you. You Exhibit A. While they were stealing the product and putting the product on the market. There is now a melatonin craze. If you are in health at all, if you're into the health food industry at all, you know that people are buying melatonin like out of the y'all. Europeans are buying melatonin, and they're buying it in massive quantities, and people are getting rich from it. Rich. Guaranteeing that you don't be the first one out of the block in the race. Guaranteeing that you don't have, they think, the monies to begin to take some of the profit and reinvest it into the infrastructure of our inner cities and into the infrastructure of Africa. Guaranteeing that you don't know anything, and guaranteeing that when you read things about us, you think we're ranting and raving maniacs. All right. Well, I may be, but my madness is about melanin. Right. And so that what you have before you now is a major health industry, the biggest major money maker in the past 18 months to 2 years. It's hit the health food industry like a mad dog. They made about $20 billion on melatonin products alone. What could we have done with that? So it's important that you understand the nature of the beast, that you understand the political geology of what we're dealing with, and more importantly, that you now know where we are going. Now, as the old people say, we ain't dead yet. And so as a result, we are reformulating the board. We are moving the company that manufactures the vitamins to Africa. Thank you. And no one can stop us this time, because we don't have to worry about where it's going, because I'm an installed queen and it's going on the land that I have jurisdiction over in Ghana. So we got it set up. We will be doing our first test run over there to develop the building for these structures this spring. It's very important that we do this. And we're going to be looking at the distribution of this to the 16 ECOWAS nations and the inner cities and rural cities where our people live, period. Because one, you can't afford this other stuff. It's getting to be very expensive. Two, some of it is not purified properly. And three, and more importantly, the dosage structure that they're using of the actual melatonin is a synthetic melatonin. And while that may be good for quality control at this point, you don't really need to do all of that. What you need to do is deal with the precursors. So now laying that, are you all with me? Y'all follow me? So laying that foundation, let me start to deal with some of the issues related to why this is so hot, why it is so important that we understand it, and how it is important for you to preserve that which God gave you, how you do that, because we're in for the fight of our lives in this one. So let me come down and let's get going. Okay, that's phase one, y'all. This is a quote from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It says, they work on you in ways you cannot fight. They keep on and on until you are fixed. And what is happening, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, is that we're being worked on in very subtle ways that we don't understand. And for the first time in our history, our basic chemical structure is being destroyed. The ancient ancestors referred to this as Isfet. Isfet was supposed to be the opposite, dialectical opposite of the synthesis of Ma'at. Isfet is chaos. And there is chaos in three modes: physical, informational, as I just described, and personal. What is occurring because of the lack of information that we have about ourselves, it allows us to have personal habits that are not necessarily in our best interest, that are definitely aesthetic in terms of our genotype, our phenotype, and our spirit, and that permits physical and chemical and neurobiological assault. Everybody follow me? Now, as a result of that, the world in the hands of the beast seems to be that we are losing touch with the natural order. The natural order would have us in sync with the harmony and biorhythms of nature. Your melanin and melatonin systems in your body work on a circadian rhythm. They work on a daylight, nightlight mechanism. They work in harmony with nature. And I'm going to show you how that is aesthetically destroyed. As a result of us now not being in the natural order of things, we have an imbalance, an upset in the balance or the homeostasis of life, that which keeps us on an even keel. In that same sense, there has then been developed perverted possibilities of human harmony. The nature of our relationships are sick. They're perverted in many instances, they're pathological, and they're anti-natural. You got me? In that same vein, we have made compassion, caring for another human being, a subversive activity. Ripping you off is the name of the game. It's the standard by which we live. You do me before I do you back. That's the order. We have elevated selfishness over reciprocity. The example that I gave about my family having called on the ancestors to put that snake by that river to deal with those people was reciprocity. That was not an act of violence. You have to understand the difference. We have exalted injustice in every form. The nature of our being is one of injustice in this planet. We came here on this earth in the United States on an unjust manner as a people. And as a result of that, our continual supporting, aiding and abetting our enemies and our oppression is not just in the right order of Ma'at. We are being anti-natural, and we are paying for it. We have been deaf to a greater truth, and that greater truth is that we are the chosen people. We were given by God everything that we need. Now, I'm reminded of this proverb from the Yoruba people that says, please don't let my outer head spoil my inner head. And inside your head rests the pineal gland, rests the hypothalamus, rests the melanin centers in your brain that turn on and turn off the nature of your relationship with the universe, the nature of your continued existence on this earth. We all in one place, right? Okay now. And so when we get turned off like that, and we want to get away from our melanin, we do things like this. You see, I happen to think Michael is an excellent example of everything that is wrong with us as a people in terms of our belief system. See, what Michael has done is what many of y'all want to do. Just don't have the guts to admit it. You really want to be white. You really want to not have no melanin in your skin. You really want to fade into the woodwork. So I think he's a wonderful example from a behavioral standpoint. While it is pathological and perverted, it's an excellent teaching tool. And I have to applaud him and give him credit for having the guts to come on and do what most of y'all want to do. But our ancestors had another phrase for that in Kemetic language. They called it sick. So you see, we had it all covered from early on. We knew exactly what we were dealing with. Sick. As a result of that, we created emblems and symbols, the two ladies here of protection from Upper and Lower Kemet, the vulture and the snake, with the eye of enlightenment. This is important because it says that somewhere in our history, somewhere in the recesses of our minds, are the nature and being and essences of who we are and what we need to protect. And if we don't do that, we're going to be worse than what we are now, and we're in pretty bad shape. Now, let's go to this. Richard King, in his book, The African Origins of Biological Psychiatry, talked from Uraeus. Also in his other book on From Mental Slavery to Mastership, talked about the seat of the pineal gland. Now this pineal gland is important because it is the place where melatonin is secreted, sitting protected in the brain in a skull portion called the sella turcica, was protected from the beginning, and our ancestors knew it was important and put that on the crown of the king. You call the pharaoh incorrectly. Put that on the crown because it meant that when the person had risen to that higher level of consciousness, they had elevated to a new place, a new space, and that they could never be touched by the mundane, rudimentary, day-to-day operations of craziness like we have here. I don't know how much plainer I can be. Now, let's take a minute and look at this. When we look at this brain and we put it in the head, just a second, I want to pull this off. There's another important organ, and that is the eye. The eye is critical because the eye responds to light and dark. The eye is the trigger that tells your brain when to turn on and when to turn off its melatonin secretion. So that sunlight and sunset are the natural order operational mechanisms by which our ancestors governed their lives before they got fluorescent lights and before they got shifts working at night, before they got partying all hours of the evening. We were people that were closely related to the cycles of nature. And all of the ancient systems, whether they be Hindu systems, whether they be Chinese systems, whether they be systems of every spiritual order, they all respond to you as an extension of a cycle within a larger cycle in nature. that was governed in the human organism by man's ability to see. The light falls on the retina. The retina then transfers it back to something called the optic chiasma, where we call it medicine decussates. I love that word, isn't that nice? Decussates. And it crosses over to the other side, goes back then to the hypothalamus, and then back into the interstices of the brain. Now, what is critical here in the operations of our body is that this organism, this human, H-U-E-M-A-N, then becomes a then becomes a repository of cycles in the day, with the eye coming through the sunlight, coming in, then hitting through the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus and the pineal are very intricately related to melatonin secretion. Now, when you're studying in school, you mostly study what we call end organ responses. You end up studying the hormones that come from the pituitary gland, and that then the stimulating hormones, the releasing hormones from the hypothalamus that then go down to the testicles or go down to the ovaries or go down to the liver, and then they have a feedback loop. Nobody ever talks to you about what causes all of that to go into first place in the first place. What causes that is sunlight coming into the eye at the appropriate time of the day, striking then into this region of the brain, hypothalamus, and the pineal gland then sets up a mechanism where it secretes melatonin in nighttime, serotonin in the daytime. Peak concentration of melatonin is between 2 and 4 a.m. Therefore, if your shifts and cycles are altered from that time period, you are going to feel out of touch. You will be out of touch. So that this, when daylight comes, it signals to the pineal to turn off melatonin production. Everybody with me? Yep. And when you turn off melatonin production, then you turn up serotonin production. That keeps you awake. That allows you to function in the daytime. If you find yourself having to sleep in the daytime, having to take cat naps, having to feel uncomfortable, it means that your lifestyle is doing something that is off cycle, arrhythmic, out of touch with nature. Our ancestors functioned on that mechanism where when daylight came, 5, 6 o'clock, they got up. And when dark came, they went to bed. Now, they may not have gone to sleep, they might have done other things, but they went to bed. And so, in the process of doing that, they were in harmony with nature, and their hormones and things worked. You know, we all talk about, health, and it's important for diet and these things. And you say, well, I know my grandmama and them, they ate pork, and they ate all that stuff, and they still lived, but they lived a different lifestyle than you did. They went to bed, they got up, and they ate only fresh fruits and vegetables. They ate only fresh meat. Whether you eat meat, I'm a vegetarian, but I'm just saying that they ate these things in the order, and they ate them within the season in which they were produced. Got to understand this. These things that you abandon are the very things that were used to keep you healthy. And in so doing, by using these mechanisms, you have every kind of system in the body. Now, you can't read all of that, so I'll read it for you. Emotions, reproduction, heart regulation. African people suffer from hypertension. Suffer from hypertension a lot. And one of the things not only is diet and stress, but also their inability to be back in harmony with the natural orders of their body. Sometimes just sleeping and changing the sleep cycle and the rhythm will sometimes lower the blood pressure. Yeah, without medicines that impede men's sexual functions, okay? Okay, and so all of these things, and every organ system in your body has melanin in it. Did you ever wonder why the nipples on a woman's breasts are dark? Because that's a highly sensitive area. Melanin cells running wild all over there. All the pubic areas, all those areas that you use for pleasure are also highly melanated areas. And they stimulate, when you touch them, they cause release of hormones that cause other things to take place. That's a normal biological mechanism to preserve the organism, because originally it was for reproduction, not just pleasure. And so what we have going for us is being in harmony. Everybody with me? It's going to take me a little while, y'all. It's going to take me a little while. And so that in the context of looking at melanin and melanocyte stimulating hormone that produces it, we have a closer view of what happens. Now, I want you to understand that memory loss and Alzheimer's, the aging process, is related to a change in the melatonin cycle in the pineal gland. Regulation of your heart and blood pressure relates to a change in the melatonin serotonin cycles in your body. Cancer patients have abnormal melatonin secretion. Are y'all catching my drift? Everything now that is a major contributor to people's early death cycles are interwound in melanin and the pineal gland. Now, interestingly enough, as people age in the so-called normal process, the pineal calcifies. Now, some folks start out with it more calcified from jump than other folk do. I don't need to tell you who they are. You know them for what they are. And so that we can look at the various variations on the human thing, the African thing, and see that Asian people and African people and people who so-called Hispanic people have higher concentrations of activated melanin in their pineal glands with less calcification. Now, all pineal glands calcify, but if you got 100% or 90% and you only get calcified 5% with age, you got a lot more left, right? But if you start out with 50% and you calcify 10 to 15%, you out of here. So what is happening is that the melatonin cycles in your body, with our children, they are very high, very highly elevated. Then there is a slight drop in melatonin secretion at the time of pubescence or puberty. When it drops slightly, it releases, the releasing factors come out of the hypothalamus, and then you get follicle stimulating hormone, you get testosterone, you get progesterone, you get estrogen released so that you can develop the secondary sex characteristics, so that you can be differentiated into male and female in terms of your functions. Then the second time in life that melatonin drops again is when you become an older person. But what we've been able to find, ladies and gentlemen, is that cancer patients also have very low melatonin secretion. Patients with HIV disease have very low melatonin secretions. Patients who have migraines and epilepsy have abnormal melatonin secretions. We also find that women who go into menopause have lowered melatonin secretions. It's starting to sound like a repeating rifle, isn't it? So that no wonder everybody wants, you can ward off the aging process, senescence, rather. You know, there's aging and then there's getting old. You know, there's two different things. And you can ward that off because of the natural inherent protectors. The drugs that we use sometimes to treat other conditions destroy the melatonin secretion and put you at risk for aging. If you ever notice a patient that is when there is fertilization taking place, you then have some black streak starts to appear. Those melanocyte cells start to migrate and develop your nervous system, called the neural tube and the neural crest. That organizes the rest of your body. When you want to attack some animal, most of the things that kill us come and destroy the ability to defend yourself. Melatonin enhances that ability. Melatonin has an interesting effect over and above also causing the release of these hormones. It also has a special affinity, or rather likeness, for the nucleus of the cell. It comes into and puts a protective coating around the nucleus and around the mitochondria that gives you energy. What am I saying? I'm saying that with melatonin, you can ward off infections. You can ward off the aging process, senescence, rather. You know, there's aging and then there's getting old. You know, there's two different things. And you can ward that off because of the natural inherent protectors. The drugs that we use sometimes to treat other conditions destroy the melatonin secretion and put you at risk for aging. If you ever notice a patient that has HIV in the terminal stages, they look old. They look very, very old, like an old person. Do you ever wonder why they look like that? Is because their melatonin secretion from their pineal gland is off. Now, when we look at melanin, we notice that there is a difference in when it's produced in light and dark. Normally, melanin has a peak, it rises, then it goes down. In the summertime, the peak you can see more here. In the winter, there's a longer lay period. That's why you're sleepier sometimes in the winter. It gets dark earlier. And melatonin is a natural sleeping product because one of its precursors is tryptophan. And tryptophan was on the market for many years as a natural sleeping pill. I don't know, I think they took it off because some people started developing eosinophilia where they had too many of a certain kind of white blood cells, but those were all European people. That did not happen in African population. But what happens is that if you look in the winter, many of our cycles and our work schedules are more hectic. So the time when we should be dealing with more rest, we're up doing more things. So we're already violating our natural order. Y'all with me? Okay. I'm getting there. Melatonin is also responsible for providing stimulus to the thymus gland. The thymus gland sits in your neck, and it produces lymphocytes, some of which you've heard about with HIV called T cells. Okay? So now T cell production is mediated by pineal gland release of melatonin. In patients with HIV, there is an abnormal response. You're listening very carefully to where we're going, okay? Because what we're saying here is that you have a reduction in melatonin, therefore a decrease in T cells. You don't have to have HIV. You can do things that also cause it. But if you notice that the T cells and melatonin cells parallel, and melatonin release parallels each other. When it rises, your T cell count rises. And T cells are important for defending against disease. Everybody with me? Y'all all knew this, right? So I'm just repeating myself, talking to myself up here. Now, one of the things that happened is that some European researchers in Italy decided that they wanted to see how pineal gland worked on aging. What they did was take white mice, of course. What else? They took white mice and they took mice that would be the equivalent of 29 years of age and mice that would be the equivalent in human years of 75 years of age. And they transplanted their pineal glands. In other words, they gave the old mice the young pineal gland and the young mice the old pineal gland. In 6 weeks, you couldn't tell the difference. The young mice got older, body weight dropped. The old mice got younger, started running around the cage looking for the female mice, trying to have a party. And you couldn't tell the difference. Then they decided to take the pineal glands from some mice, totally took them out. Many of these mice died, but others, that was the control group. In the experimental group, they started feeding them melatonin in their water at night. And just by giving them melatonin in their water at night, the life expectancy of those mice was longer than those who had had the thymus removed. This is very important, you all. And it's not, and they don't intend for you to have this information. One of the things that we do, but let me say this while I'm talking. Anybody that wants any of this information, just send me a self-addressed envelope and $1 for postage and handling, and I'll give it all to you. Okay, I'll give it all to you. I'll give the address at the end. Oh, you want it now? Okay. You can write me, Dr. Patricia Newton. I'll give it to you at the end. At the end. But one of the things, and I want you all to take, I want everybody to write me, and I want you to take this melatonin lifestyle inventory and another test that I will give you. I will analyze these results for you and give them back to you with some recommendations for how you can personally change your lifestyle. You get my $200 consultation for 29-cent stamp. And $1. Okay. Okay. But in this inventory, it talks about what you are already like and how you may be unknowingly challenging and changing your melatonin. Okay? Just go through it for a quick minute. In general, my life follows predictable patterns. I tend to do the same things the same time every day. Or my life is hectic. Don't answer. I spend a lot of time outdoors. I spend most of my work indoors. Because of our work styles, we do not get adequate exposure to sunlight. And because, see, in nutrition, there is food, there is water, there is sun. Sun is a nutrient for humans and in particular for melanated people, okay? So that if you're not spending an adequate amount of time in the sun, you are already altering your cycle and depleting and depriving your stores. That's one of the reasons we created those vitamins, to try to assist you in doing that. I rarely use medications, or I use medications. Most medications have an effect upon melanin, and so therefore you can override it by your diet. I feel my life is in tune with my body rhythms. Lord help us. I feel that I don't fit into my current lifestyle. I'm just going to go through a few of these. I usually keep stress under control. I don't know how you can say that as an African living in America. I don't think that's true. If you say yes, I know you're lying. I have trouble sleeping. Many people come for sleep disorder, and they're given short-term sleeping pills. which also interfere with their melatonin. And so one of the reason that some people are having sleep disorders is not because they're just stressed, it's because their biorhythm is off. The normal rhythm in your body that God gave you is off. Depression and electromagnetic fields. I'm not going to go through all that. I want you all to write me, and I'll send the inventory to you, and you take it. The other thing that I would want you to do with me is I would want you to chart an activity level. We're going to put you to work. An activity level. It's talking about whether your activity is high or low, and during these times of day. Starting at midnight, because midnight is when we start to see that rise in melatonin, peaking around here, dropping around here, serotonin peaking around here, dropping around here. You got me? So we want to see. Now this is how a chart looks. Don't even worry about that. I'm just going to take you through it briefly. I'm just show you. We want you to chart your cycle because in addition to your lifestyle, we want to see what your activity profile looks like. Show you what a normal looks like, or whatever that is. Ideal pattern means the people are up at sunrise, down at sunset. Got it? Now here's phase shifted. Phase shifted occurs when you travel from one time zone to another. I just got back from Japan, and then yesterday morning was in Japan 2 weeks, then went to Los Angeles, flew in from LA yesterday morning, and I'm here today. And people say, you're not tired? I said, no, because my melatonin is working, and then I'm going to go home tomorrow and go to sleep. But this is what happens. Your phase is slightly off. You're up and you're down at different times. And then here is an irregular phase. I'm not going to take you through all that, just showing it to you, okay? Because that's what you're going to do for me. And so when we deal with stress, we have a normal stress response curve that when a person is stressed, they mount an alarm reaction, then they sort of compensate for it, then there's an exhaustion phase. When you're under stress, there are glands in your body called the adrenal glands that excrete corticosteroids. Corticosteroids impede melatonin production. But it's required, you need them to be excreted because it's a fight-flight mechanism. You need to have adrenaline, noradrenaline pumping so you can do what has to be done. But you can't sustain that, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. So if you're constantly under stress, the organism is going to break down. You are not going to have a normal response. And if it stays up all the time, not only are you messing with your melanin, you're also probably screwing up your ability to respond to stress in the first place. Now, let's look at what an abnormal curve looks like. This is a kind of bad graph, but that's okay. Now, you see, we don't have that splay of that curve that went sort of like that. Now we've got a sharp rise and then a dip. This is the response, and then here you've got these broken responses. This is what happens with you living in New York City every day. Because everybody in this room living in this town, you don't drink enough water to flush all these pollutions out. Black folk like sodas and juice. But you can't drink all that juice. You have to drink water. Because water, and every time I come here, I know that there is a change in the atmosphere because I just get so dry. Maybe you don't know it because you've compensated for it here, but it's very dry. And then if my nose stops up and I blow it, it's black stuff coming out of it. Now, you cannot tell me that you are not every day bombarding yourself, and that's a stressor to the body. And that stressor to the body creates the release of those corticosteroids, adrenaline, noradrenaline, to prepare you to fight, and every time you bombard that over and over again, you decrease your melatonin production. As a corollary, you decrease your ability to respond to stress, you decrease your immune response. That's why when you stress, you get a cold. That's why if you under stress, your period won't come if you're women. Or you'll get a cold, or you get a urinary tract infection, or you find yourself sniffling and you want to, well, what's going on? You know, you may have gotten adequate sleep, but if you're stressed, you're not, you stop that cycle and you change the way you respond. Everybody with me? I'm almost there. Okay, now, there are many medications that we take. And this is particular germane to African Americans. Alpha blockers, beta blockers, and combination alpha blockers, and NSAIDs. High blood pressure. We take most of the hypertension medicine that you take decreases and deprives melatonin. The fact of lowering your blood pressure with the medication is artificial, and in so doing it, it automatically robs melatonin. A lot of young women take Motrin and stuff around their periods. Not only over time will it totally destroy your kidneys, but it will also decrease your melatonin so you can't fight back. All you coffee drinkers. Now, I'm not going to say that 1 cup of coffee will not do enough. 1 cup of coffee a day will not do enough damage to you if you are doing everything else correctly. But these drugs y'all got out here, Valium, Librium, Xanax, Buspar, alcohol, cocaine, barbiturates, crack, y'all know, marijuana, all destroyed. Most of the drugs that they treat cancer with, birth control pills and estrogen replacements, thyroid medication gives a plus or minus depending on the dose. There's a certain kind of heart medication called ACE inhibitors and anti-diabetic medications. Now, what am I saying? Yes, you have to take them to keep things in order. But the reason the things got out of order in the first place is what I'm talking about, that caused the imbalance, that make you now have to imbalance the system even further. That's why diabetics are more prone to infections and heal slower. By the way, melatonin, if you take melatonin, or you have excess melatonin or adequate melatonin, that's why you can heal an injury very quickly. Everybody with me? All right, I'm close. Getting there. Exposure to radiation. Now, not just X-rays, but electromagnetic fields I'm going to talk about in just a second. Now, here's what your normal level of melatonin ought to look like around 2 o'clock at night, in the morning, peak time. After you expose, and I wipe that off, but this is, let's go to 130 kilovolts. Look at how much the electromagnetic field is reduced. It is reduced by over 75%. Which means when you wake up in the morning, you're not fit for nothing, let alone talking about defending something. May not even be able to get it up either, brothers, that time of morning. All due respect. Now let's talk about electromagnetic field. Now what are I don't see no witnesses here either, okay. What are electromagnetic fields? I'm going to change it. I'm going to move in just a minute. Electromagnetic fields are random electrons running around with no control, to make it simple. I like to break things down so everybody can understand it. We're exposed on a constant daily basis to EMFs. And all these EMFs destroy your melanin. You can get this table from me as well. But let's look at a few of them, and let's look at how much milligauss is that's a measurement for EMFs, how much is available to the human body in proximity. This is a half a foot if you're a foot away, 2 feet, 4 feet. Air cleaners, baby monitors. Look at here, electric blankets. All y'all got those old electric blankets, but what I'm saying is that this is high. This will reduce your melatonin by 75% that particular day. Ceiling fans, can openers close to you. Look at this. These are hidden sources of EMFs in right in your home that you aren't even aware of, that are depleting your melanin stores. Crock pots. Electric drills. Many of our people have carpentry and service professions that they have to work with these things, and the very professions that they have to earn a living are things that will impede them. Let's go down to microwave ovens. Vacuum cleaners. Now, that's a lot of stuff, y'all. And you compound that, and if you cook all your stuff at the job or at home with a microwave, and because it's easy for your children to heat up their French fries, you're giving it to them. But you know what? The children probably can stand more of it than you can, because the children have higher melatonin secretions. So they may be able up to a point. The problem is we don't know at what point it becomes damaging to them. You all with me so far? Now, how do we protect against those free radicals? Because if I show them to you, I got to talk about how you protect against them. We cannot avoid them in America. You got power lines that you have to drive by and ride by that are emitting stuff. You got cellular telephones that we now know may be synonymous with brain cancer. We think that's what happened with Reggie Lewis. He's from Baltimore, by the way. I'm going to keep circling that one. Stop smoking. Avoid as many pollutants as you can. You know, interestingly, in Japan, I found something very interesting in Japan when I was there last month. When the people have a cold or the flu, they wear masks. They don't get on the streetcars without a mask on their face to protect everybody else. Isn't that interesting? Yep. We don't do that. We cough all in your face and get mad if you roll your eyes. And your breath be smelling bad and stuff, you know. Limit chemical exposures. Bleach and all these things. Let me tell you ladies something. Get you some gloves. Get you some rubber gloves. Do not do your housework in your hands. You don't do your housework in your hands, ladies. Get you some rubber gloves that act as a protective shield against some of these things, because these things are, these cleaning fluids that you use, there's the ammonias and all these things that we need to clean up that dirt where we are, and we need to keep it clean. But against your skin, they can get absorbed and they can cause you to have a deterioration in melatonin. Just get you some rubber gloves, for God's sake. And so, men too, okay? Try to minimize radiation. Well, I don't know what much we can do about this, okay? But the other thing here, let me say something to you, is eating light, but particularly at night. Now, we all talk about eating light at night and gaining weight and all that, but there's another reason. When you eat heavily at night, in order for the foods to be digested, they got to shunt blood to the gut. That blood needs to be flowing throughout the body, and the system needs to be slowed down anyway, so that's why you get indigestion. Because the body is not rushing that blood down into that gut. It needs to be produced something, in other places. Avoiding injury. Now, these are just general rules, okay? But I'm just putting them there so that we need to become melanin friendly. We need to become melanin friendly people. We are not melanin friendly. We may have it, but we're not friendly to it. Now, let's talk about some exposure to electromagnetic fields. And mind you, the more gadgets they make for you, the more you black people buy them, the more EMF exposure you're getting. The more you sit close to that TV, the more you leave that TV on at night when you sleep, not only are you getting EMFs, but you may be getting some subliminal stimulation and programming that you don't even know about that keeps you destroying yourself. Yeah, there was a computer, yeah, but you can put screens and stuff up. Avoiding power lines. If you got an old house where you live, you can, in some cities, probably not in New York, you can, they require you to replace these wires so often in these homes. You can ask for the EPA for an inspection, and the utilities department in many cities will be required to give it if you call the EPA. And somewhere, if you write me, I may have a number where I think I have an address where you can get the information, where you can write and get where you need to call for a particular place. You've got to make your houses safer, and we tend to not be involved in environmental issues. We don't think that's important for us. We got more to lose than anybody. We got more melanin. We need to get some people involved. This needs to become, these are racial and class issues around where we live. Minimize exposure to appliances, alarm clocks, water beds, oh God. And do you know that vending machines have fluorescent lights in them? And those fluorescent lights, every time you pull those vending machines, cause a deterioration in your melatonin. Did you know that? You do now. I bet you that junk food, all that fat in that food impedes melatonin secretion. And there's this book called the EMF book by Mark Pinsky. You can get it from the library. It tells you all about these EMF exposures. If you work in a commercial building, the air conditioner's on the top. The other thing about EMFs is that they can seep through the floor, seep through the wall. So you may be doing all right, but next door neighbor may be screwing up. And you may be getting passive exposure. If you have an air conditioning unit and you have a reading chair by that air conditioning unit, move that reading chair. If you have a space heater and that space heater sits by where you sit and do your contemplating, move the space heater further away from you, because you're picking up a lot of passive EMF that way. I know this is not what you thought you was coming to hear, but I'm here to save your life. I'm not here to talk about all this other stuff. Okay. Now, what are some of the other things we can do? Let's talk about our diet. You know I was coming to that, didn't you? And get away from it. You got to eat plenty of foods high in fiber and low in fat. Because these foods, most of these foods carry some ability to protect your antioxidants, and your antioxidant vitamins and things are all things that help with melatonin. Garlic to your diet. And did you know that the new data supports that if you have coronary vessel disease, eating raw garlic will serve as a lubricant to wash some of those plaques out of your coronary vessels? And put some parsley with it so you don't smell so bad. Vegetables, licorice roots, soybeans, flax seeds, sweet potatoes, all the stuff your grandfolks used to eat. Green tea, fish oil, and spices. African and so-called Mediterranean people are noted for cumin and turmeric and curry, and that's what you got to use. Cayenne is also a spice. Yes, you can use it. Yes, it's excellent. These are anti-cancer diets. And these anti-cancer diets, what we're doing is simply preserving melatonin. That's all you're doing. Now, let's talk about it. Cut back on your processed foods, y'all. The processed foods do something. They create more free radicals. And free radicals are things that destroy your cells. Melatonin protects you and helps absorb some of that free radical destruction. Okay? Y'all got it? That oatmeal mama used to give you? Whole grain cereals, whole grain breads, control your iron. Now, many African American women don't have that problem because many of us are iron depleted. Many black women have low iron count, so they tend not to have that problem. Feed your immune system. These are things that you got to do. You got to get vitamin B6. You got to get zinc. You got to build up the stores and things that help your melatonin. Avoid stimulants, eat light at night, boost your antioxidants. That's vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin C. There should be an A there. Beta carotene, selenium. And give a thought to where you eat and who you eating with. Because with melanin, like I say, you can pick up and receive anything. You go cuss somebody out, and then you gonna go turn around and eat. It's a wonder your stomach don't throw you out. Throw you out. Yeah, I said that's not a problem for most African American women because most of them are iron depleted. So most of them have low irons. No, that's not low. That's not good. Telling them to increase their iron is fine because most of them don't have that as a problem. They don't have high iron. Most black women have low iron. They need iron because iron helps build the red blood cells to carry the oxygen and stuff. But if it's high, then that can cause a depletion. And I said that's not a problem generally for our women. They tend not to have it. Tryptophan in your diet. I'm going to show you some things with that. Show you some food. And if you can eat outside, if the weather is good, that's always better. If you can sit near the window at work, that's always better. If you can take a walk during lunch hour, that's always good for you. These are basic things. Not only will it tone your muscles, it'll save your melatonin. All the things that keep you healthy. I'm going to pull it down. All this stuff I'm showing you, I'll send you, but I want you to be aware of it, okay? Food sources of beta carotene. Notice ain't no whole lot of red meat up there, y'all. Y'all notice that? Oh. Vitamin E, vitamin C, just taking you through it. There's some meat for selenium for y'all just gotta have it. Okay, I'm not gonna keep it because we gotta get through this, but I just want you to see that there are lots of things that we can do. Is this helpful to you? Yes, ma'am. Okay. B6, antioxidants. These are the things that will help build your immune system. Now, notice what I say about poultry. If you're going to eat chicken, eat it grown on organic grain. If you just got to have that bird. Organic grain. Preferably turkey and not chicken. If you got to eat it. Okay? Potatoes with the skin. Okay? Zinc, nuts, fish, beans, green vegetables. I still have this thing about red meat, but I have to list everything because everybody got to be included. We're not discriminatory.
What's the mullet?
That's crab, crawdad, shellfish. It's probably spelled incorrectly. Tryptophan. You can get it in other places, but I put that up there because most people at least do something. I don't recommend cheese, but I'm one of these rigid vegetarians, but it's okay. Food sources of iron. Broccoli is an excellent food.
What kind of you get tryptophan from?
You can probably get it from most of the green vegetables. You can get it from broccoli and cabbage too.
What about okra?
Yeah, okra's good. Sources of food stimulants to be avoided.
Yep.
Chocolate, menstrual period chocolate, coffee, cold medicines with caffeine, sodas with caffeine. Some asthma medicines you may not be able to help, but let me tell you, people are using melatonin to treat asthma. This stuff is deep, y'all. This is why they don't want us to have it. This is why they don't want it. Now let me talk to you about your way you preserve your foods. I want to cover everything because I may not get this opportunity again. Freezing foods does not change the antioxidant level. Therefore, you can freeze foods very well and eat them very safely. Canning, and I know we used to do a lot of that, it removes 75% of vitamin C. So if you think canning, you got to take some extra vitamin C, 1,000 to 2,000, 3,000 a day. Thawing, you got to thaw it promptly, because if it sits out over 24 hours, you lose 50% of the antioxidant capacity. Cooked frozen vegetables lose 5% of beta-carotene and 30% of vitamin C. But because you don't, if you can eat it raw, some people can't. And so that means you may need to take extra vitamin C in the lifestyle that we live in. You have to make adjustments. Now let me talk about jet lag for just a minute. It's one close to my heart. You can take melatonin tablets. Yes, you can. Yes, you may have to. Depends on how much you have to do. If you're going to take melatonin tablets, you can do it without it. That's why I put that up there. Then you recommend about 3 milligrams a night for about 3 or 4 nights after you come back from a time, particularly if you've come from overseas. I don't recommend that you do that if you don't have experience with it, and I think you should talk to a doctor before you do that. But here's what you can do on your own. On your own, you change the way you sleep. If you're going westward, meaning from here like to California, at your destination, begin your light exposure. So it means that you need to get outside. When you go to LA, get outside 2 hours before sunset, or 3 hours. If you're changing 3 time zones, 3 hours. You follow me? And then you don't have any sun in the morning, because you got to reset. You have to reset your biorhythm. You got it? If you're coming back home, then you've got to get up at sunrise. And you avoid, the night you get there, you don't go out in the sun if you can avoid it. Because if you do, you're going to alter your melatonin secretion, and it's going to turn off, and you're going to be whipped. Okay? So for every time zone, 2 to 6 time zones, that's most of the USA, get up at sunrise. If you're going 7 time zones, then you get up an hour before sunrise. What you're doing is resetting your clock, resetting your circadian rhythm. Are you all with me? All right. I'm not going to be long. This is not one of those Hellraisers, let's go get Whitey lectures, let's go save our black selves lectures is what this is. I'm not interested in them. I'm interested in saving you. I don't wish to talk about them anymore. Okay, now, let's talk about if you have any of these conditions. These are risk factors for depriving your melanin. You can exercise too much. And when you over-exercise, you cause free radical breakdown. You cause more free radicals to be produced and breakdown of your muscle tissue. That's why we created 2 products. One was called ATPase, what was called Melocene, which was an ATPase inducer to rev your muscles up to do more exercise. And then we put the pro-melanin powder, if anybody saw the powder, to drink 30 minutes after your exercise so you can put all the precursors back in to make your melatonin. You got, if you have limited exposure to sunlight, and that's everybody in North America, shift work, smoking, frequent travel, and certain medicines. Symptoms of melatonin deprivation, chronic illness, difficulty concentrating. I know some people, I think that's a problem with no matter what. Memory disturbances. If you get colds all the time, your melatonin is off, your biorhythm is off. Phase shift symptoms. Like if your work schedule changes, you may feel sleepy. If you have sleep disturbances, if you have a change in your sleep and ain't nobody bothering you, but even if they are bothering you, you still may be having melatonin problems. Now, let's talk about melatonin supplementation. The Europeans are overdoing it. If you follow those simple guidelines that I gave you, you may never need to take any melatonin. Never. Because you already got natural melatonin. But since most of us don't, that lifestyle checklist I showed you, we're going to send it back to you so you can keep it. You should take supplements only to enhance, not as a substitution for good health habits. Not as a substitution. If you buy the supplements right now, I hate to say it, but the synthetic ones are probably better than the natural because you can the quality controlled. The naturals have some impurities in them, and I can just see them finding a way to kill you off. Supplements are the supplements are derived, however, from plant melanin. Okay? So they're safe to take. Timing is critical. You must only take them at night. You take them in the daytime, you're going to mess your cycle up. Only at night. The dose should be adjusted. You should never take more than 5 milligrams a day. People are taking out here in these health food, in these gyms, are taking 10, 15, 20, 30 milligrams of melatonin a day. They're going to be messed up. That's fine. Let them be messed up because we know who's taking it. Now, there are some conditions, however, that may require you to take some melatonin supplements on an as-needed basis. Like if your diets are not structured properly and you're not getting proper sunlight, you may have to do this, particularly if you work around X-ray exposure, X-ray equipment, if you ever got sunburn. And I would say to you, if you do have a burn or an injury, I recommend 1 to 2 milligrams of melatonin for 5 days to increase your healing. I recommend it because you don't have the natural, we're not living in harmony with nature as we used to. But I think you should always talk to your doctors first. Always. And if they don't know anything about it, tell them to call me. Now, this is the part that I get to the end. It's almost 11 o'clock. Y'all are good people. Before I do that, wait, let me back this up. Europeans have been doing melanin research for the last 25 to 30 years. That is why they are objecting to us doing melanin research. I got this letter February the 1st from the National Institutes of Health. I'm writing to let you know we are currently recruiting patients with rapid cycling bipolar, that's manic depressive illness, to participate in outpatient therapeutic trials of melatonin. This is your government. Bright light therapy and on negative ion generator. No, this is European people at the National Institutes of Health. Jewish. And some of the best melanin researchers at Hadassah University, by the way, and also in Russia. Data from our chronobiological studies indicate that timing, here you go, y'all, of nocturnal melatonin secretion shifts as patients cycle between depression and hypomania. We are therefore testing whether these interventions can be used to prevent such circadian shifts and thereby increase the patient's mood stability. A lot of people who are irritable are people who are not sleeping well or people whose biorhythms are off. So anyway, what I want you to do is they're asking us now to send them patients. They want us to send them patients, but we're not supposed to know nothing about no melanin. What I have done for you right here, because I have to have you see this. This slide represents all the conditions that are currently being used in medical research to be treated by melatonin. Cancer, arthritis, Alzheimer's, postpartum depression, seasonal affective disorder, that's people who only get depressed in the wintertime, epilepsy, depression, glaucoma, morbid obesity, heart and circulatory disease, sleep disorders, Down syndrome in children, menopause, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, migraine headaches, infertility, contraception, AIDS, and autoimmune diseases. Research is currently in progress on both these conditions worldwide. I have data and papers from Russia, from Israel, from Italy, from France, from NIH, from Oregon University, from UCLA, from New York University, but everybody but the black folks. Now, this is deep. This is very, very deep, because what it symbolizes is you all know that we're talking about the natural order of life. We're talking about our ancestors using these symbols to represent for them the coming up and a Kepler rising. Now, what does that mean? You've got the Uraeus and the lotus flower. You've got the Lord of rising. You've got here the symbols of our coming into our own consciousness. Now, in doing that, I have a Ma'atian obligation and duty to do what our ancestors told us, and you do too. We have to deal with the 9 principles of rightness that are consistent with Ma'at. We have to have the right intention, the right thought, the right speech, give forth the right effort, create right action, living right, which is what I've been talking about tonight. We have to relate right. We have to have the right understanding and the right wisdom. In order to do that, that is synonymous with us having the right kind of life. And I've shown this slide once before, and I'm going to show it again because it is such a profound slide to me. And it shows these people know who you are, whether you do or not. They are creating life here. Notice that the person that they create is an African woman. Remember, from the original source, this is DNA. This is the primordial energy that creates a spark in life. This, how can I get this? Wait. I can't get this over. I'm almost done, y'all. I know you're tired. This is melanin. This is melanin. This is DNA. But more importantly, have I got something else to show you? This over here in this corner that you may not be able to see. Right here is Meduneter. Hold on a second. Hieroglyphics. Egyptian, Meduneter. Now let me read it for you. That's going to be important. So you got DNA. You got everything being created in the image of your ancestors. You got all this created. You got melanin, the light spark, organizing the DNA to create the human being. But what does it say down here? It says, I am a child of God, therefore I live. I live. And you need to understand that they know that you don't live in the absence of melanin, that you don't live in the absence of understanding who you are. So along with the right thought and the right intention, you got to also deal with what George G.M. James used to say. You have to be virtuous. You have to be able to control your thoughts, control your actions, have a purpose, identify with a spirit, have a mission in life, if it's nothing else but to save your black soul. Evidence of a call to spiritual orders. Get rid of resentment, because when you hold a grudge, you create stress, you break down your melanin centers. If you don't like me, you the one got the problem, I don't got it. Confidence in your power, the power of a master as a teacher, confidence in your ability to learn, and readiness for initiation. You are now in initiatory phase. This is initiation 101 into the salvation of your soul and your next generation. We may already be a bit late. Part of the problem that we have in our blockage from ancient Kemet, they used to call the 7 obstacles, is that we're too concerned with ourselves. We have wrong notions. We have false piety. We have a quest to being by ourselves. Don't you know that you interact and deal and you stimulate melanin by being with people? We get too sentimental over the wrong issues. We satisfy too easily, and we take nothing but settling for that which is routine. Your ancestors created pyramids. They created mathematical systems that did not allow you to be imperfect. They did not tolerate this kind of behavior that we are now existing, and they did not allow their enemies to live. These are Meroitic queens of Nubia, smiting their enemies. look at them closely. I make no comment. We have the right to stand fast. We have the duty to protect our children. It is our responsibility to not allow ourselves to deal with a world that does not understand who we are. In the 21st century, over and above these pyramids, we want to add a new dimension, and that is a melanated philosophy for survival in the 21st century. Without it, all of the rest of this will not exist. I've just begun to give you the rudiments of that survival because it is our responsibility as we move forward in this earth to resurrect ourselves from the dung of the earth, to have a Kepra rising, to become one with the universe again, and to live in harmony and nature like we used to do as our ancestors taught us. It is then and only then that we will be able to survive this onslaught that keeps affecting us every day. And if it means you have to give up your friends, and you'll change your people, places, and things, if it means you got to do that, that's what you better do. And it says, but what will other people think? And grandma said, well, you the one got yourself in this oven burning up. You're the only one that can put out the fire. You're the only one, my black brothers and sisters, who can save your black selves. It is my honor and my duty to help share this information with you, but it is of no good if you don't apply it to yourself. Ma'at and Amen will be satisfied with what my contribution is, but not with what yours is if you do not take it to your heart. It is in the name of love and spirit and in our beautiful black selves that I offer you this information in the geopolitics of your survival. I thank you, and may Amen be satisfied. Okay, I will. My address is 11 East Chase Street, 11 East Chase Street, CHASE, Suite 7A. A is an apple, good for melatonin. Baltimore, Maryland, 21202. Thank you very much. May God bless you. 11 East Chase Street, Suite 7A, Baltimore, Maryland, 21202. Thank you very much.
Let's give Dr. Patricia Newton a warm round of applause. Thank her very much, Dr. Patricia Newton, Melanin and the Geopolitics of Health. As she said, let's save our black selves. Let us please stand and hold hands. Those who are about to leave, we're all getting ready to leave. Let us affirm our Africanness before we go out. And while we are going out, let us remember that on March 26th, that's next Tuesday, there will be a vigil for our brother Abagani Malako at 125th Street and Frederick Douglass Boulevard at 6 o'clock. That's next Tuesday at 6. There will be a vigil at 125th and Frederick Douglass Boulevard for our brother Abagani. Let us also support the 3rd annual jazz concert. Bob Cunningham, James Spalding, Leon Thomas. That's Friday, March 29th from 7 to 11 p.m. That's at 966 Fulton Street in Brooklyn between Cambridge Place and Grand Avenue. That's Friday, March 29th from 7 o'clock. And I understand that this is in support of an international organization for crippled children in Ghana. So let's go out to the Fort Greene Senior Citizens Council Center on March 29th. And then finally, there's a restaurant, Arbicario Restaurant in Manhattan, serving African-style buffet every Sunday afternoon from 12 until 9. Brother Emlyn Paul, who is a faithful member of the United African Movement and who has an association or relatives at this cuisine, which is located 123rd and Broadway in Manhattan, asking everybody to please support these brothers at this African-style buffet. That's every Sunday afternoon from 12 to noon, 3143 Broadway between LaSalle and Tiemann Place in Manhattan, 123rd and Broadway. Please thank everybody for coming out this evening, and we're moving forward. We're growing strong. The mere fact that we're here tonight means that we must be stepping on somebody's toes, and that is good. Anytime that white folks concerned about you and put pressure on Negroes to keep you out of certain places, it means that we must be doing something right. And so we're going to keep on keeping on. We have been involved in this struggle for quite some time. We certainly not going to let this get us down. It's going to make us stronger. As we said before, those who fail to learn from the lessons of history are condemned to repeat themselves. And this is a wake-up call for us to build the kind of institutions that our ancestors has commanded us to build. We are people who built pyramids. We're people who built temples. We're people who built great knowledge centers, great libraries. It's time for the black man and black woman to begin to rebuild again. And this is our mandate in order to do that. So we're very pleased that we're here. We know now what we must do. Dr. Newton has tapes in the back, and I'm certainly sure that many of us will pick them up, because the knowledge that she gave here tonight is so deep that it requires a lot of reflection. We're an African people, robbed from our homeland, robbed of our names, our languages, our cultures, our religions, our womanhood, our manhood, our sisterhood, our brotherhood, our motherhood, our fatherhood, and our self-respect. But we shall rise, never to fall again. Up, ye mighty race, you can accomplish what you will. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Honk the person again next to you and let them know you still love them. At City Hall. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning, there's a